Howdy, folks, and welcome to the podCAST Iron. My name is Laura Mullen-Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Our guest today is Rian Kerrane. Rian is an Irish sculptor and currently a professor for the College of Arts and Media at the University of Colorado, Denver. She is also a founding member of the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and has contributed her time and efforts towards organizing the International Cast Iron Conference. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as Rian is involved in so many more things and holds so many other roles, but you'll hear all about that in the interview, so buckle up. Rian, thank you for chatting with me and going into such detail about your life and your artistic development. I really enjoyed hearing how your life experiences have influenced the work that you make, and I am blown away by all of your accomplishments. I am just so grateful to have had this opportunity to hear about them in more detail because you are a major role model of mine. The impact that you have had and continue to impress on the field of cast iron art is undeniable, and I'm excited to see how all of your projects, especially the summer program that you have going on in Germany, I'm excited to see how they'll all continue to unfold. Now, just quickly, before we get into the interview, I have to mention our wonderful sponsors. Firstly, the podcast Iron is sponsored in part by individual supporters on Patreon. And so, yes, that's about 20 to 25 of our friends and colleagues. So thank you to everyone who has personally joined as a Patreon member to help me afford the production costs of keeping this show going. And I'd also like to thank the top supporters of today's show, which are the Metal Museum, the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and Sloss Metal Arts. These fantastic organizations provide a large portion of the funding that is keeping my ability to produce these episodes afloat. So I just want to take a few moments to introduce these top supporters to you now. And so one top supporter of today's episode is the National Ornamental Metal Museum. So the Metal Museum is located in the heart of Memphis, Tennessee, and it is the only museum of its kind dedicated to preserving, promoting, and advancing the art and craft of metalwork. The Metal Museum offers a unique experience with a rich exhibition schedule, a growing permanent collection, an on-site blacksmith shop and foundry, and education and outreach programming. From demos and classes to master workshops and 2-year apprenticeships, this museum offers vast opportunities for all skill levels. And the Metal Museum actually just hosted the Fire Conference, which is the Foundry Invitational River Exhibition casting conference, maybe about 2 weeks ago. And it was open to students as well as emerging and advanced artists. And if you are interested in seeing what kind of it was like, check out their Instagram account, which is Metal Museum. There are some pictures and documentation of the event and what it looks like. And if you're interested in attending next year, then reserve the last week of May on your calendar for it. And obviously check the website as it gets closer, but you should check it out if you haven't already. And if you already checked it out, you should go back. Additionally, the Metal Museum's exhibition calendar is currently in a season of casting, and they started off in February with the exhibition titled Branching Out, which explores the fascinating ways that mentors, students, and foundries share knowledge in paths of growth resembling a family tree. And that exhibition is open now and will be open until September 8th, so you've still got a little while if you want to check it out. Also in April, casting artist Morgan Lugo's Tributaries exhibition titled It's All Relative opened with a reception and artist talk on April 21st. And, I just had Morgan as a guest on this podcast 2 or 3 episodes ago, so you should go back and check it out if you want to hear about her art and her life and her journey in cast iron. But also in September, immerse yourself in the works of master metalsmith Preston Jackson. And his exhibition titled A Hidden Culture critiques today's society through a methodologized Civil War era American South. So to learn more and get involved with anything the Metal Museum offers, visit their website, which is metalmuseum.org. And like I already said, follow them on Instagram at Metal Museum. So thank you so much to the Metal Museum for supporting today's episode. Another very meaningful top supporter of the podcast Iron is the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. And they are an organization that consists of iron casting artists in the western states of the U.S., and their organization's goals are to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art in the western region of the U.S. And one of the ways that they accomplish this goal is by hosting a conference every 2 years. So start planning to come out west for their conference in this fall of 2024. It's going to be in the tail end of October in San Diego, California. And the official dates have been released. It'll be October 30th through November 3rd. So get it on your calendar and stay tuned for more information. And I always have to point out that you don't have to live in the West to attend the Western Conference. You can live anywhere. So you should definitely make the trip out. They'll love to have you. And I will be there, so I'll love to see you as well. A big thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and their board members for the support of this podcast. For more information about this fantastic organization, visit their website, which is wciaa.org. And finally, our longtime top supporter of the show is Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art. Based in Birmingham, Alabama, they host our national conference on contemporary cast iron art and practices, and that's every 2 years. And so it's going to be in the spring of 2025. And now that the conference planning has officially kicked off, if you want to go follow Sloss Metal Arts and NCCCIAP on Instagram, that'll help you keep up to date on all things Sloss related and conference related. And this will include calls for the next year's conference of things like guest furnaces, student cupola contest teams, exhibition entries, if you want to teach a demo or if you want to lead a workshop or if you have a presentation you would like to present or if you have an idea for a panel discussion. All of these programming things will have deadlines and I'll do my best to keep you informed. But if you feel passionate about submitting something, please take matters into your own hands and keep up to the deadlines as they correspond to your aspirations. And I also know that the Sloss Metal Arts just closed its application window for fall visiting artist slots at the beginning of this month. And so if you yourself are interested in having a residency with Sloss Metal Arts, all of the application due dates and other information for how to apply is on their website, which is slossmetalarts.com. So check that out regularly if you're interested in keeping up to date on these calls. And if you want to get emails about the national conference into your inbox, then go to the nccciap.com website. That's the conference specific website. And I think there you can sign up to be on the email list. And so you can get everything delivered directly to your inbox. So guys, let's help make this next conference in spring of 2025 be the biggest and best one yet. Thank you, Sloss Metal Arts. You are an amazing resource for our community. So finally, let's get into this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. Rian Kerrane, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on.
Well, thanks, Laura, for inviting me.
I want to start off, as is tradition, with my very first question, which is, well, Rian, who the hell are you anyways?
Hi, everybody that's listening. And I'm Rian Kerrane. I'm living in this country, the United States, about 30 years. I'm Irish, and I was born in Galway, educated with my undergrad in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and 1 year in Donegal as well, prior, like a portfolio prep year. And then I was adventuring a little bit. I'd been in India, I'd been in the Netherlands, just traveling, backpacking. Eventually made my way back to Ireland, and a couple of friends were heading over to the US on a funded sort of art 10-week thing. And I ended up coming on the same thing. And it was Louisiana. And after that experience, I went home again to Ireland. But my third trip to Ireland, I stayed here. And I ended up going to grad school in New Orleans at the University of New Orleans. And that's the sort of compressed who's Rian.
Do you mind talking a little bit about your career so far?
Oh yeah, yeah. So jumping into adjunct teaching right out of grad school, I was in North Carolina and Charlotte. I actually haven't met anybody who's taught as many classes in one semester as me, ever. I'm just saying I hold a record.
I bet you do.
I think I did. I was teaching at 3 institutions, and many of us do, but I was able to fit seminar classes and studio classes, etc., together. And so maybe 5 years in a Charlotte area, North Carolina, South Carolina. And then I was over to here, which is Denver, Colorado. And I began a tenure track position at the University of Colorado, Denver, which is also known as CU Denver. And that's, I think, about 21 or 22 years ago, Laura. It's very shocking, but that is fact. So I'm a professor in the visual arts department, and I manage a sculpture area in our College of Arts and Media.
Fantastic. Thank you for that little introduction. And I want to, even though I'm really eager to get to iron and talk about all of that, I want to talk a little bit about your childhood, and maybe if you could share some experiences that you think shaped you to become either the artist or kind of the person that you are today.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. It's like, what am I going to say? And then it's like, oh yeah. I think it's interesting as a, Irish culture, right? I'll just jump back there because I'm the eldest daughter, and I'm also the eldest of a large family. And culturally in Ireland, or socially, the eldest son inherits the farm, or etc. And I think there was a little bit of freedom in being female and oldest. And I'm sort of being facetious when I say that, but it is a little sort of nod back to what is tradition. And there is a lot of weight of tradition in Europe that I think is a little more liberated here in the US, which attracted me to the US and ultimately. So there was sort of that. I deferred from doing studies in biology and other things to Irish university system is it's a pretty stark value system. You apply with points from your exams, and it's competitive across the country. And I was aiming for certain things which were non-art related and didn't get them, and ended up taking a year to do a portfolio preparation. It was the best 9 months of my life, engaging with life drawing and jewelry and ceramics and sculpture and painting and art history. And it was for artists, 1-year certificate. So that equipped me with both the knowledge that I would never do anything else that would give me much satisfaction.
Yeah.
And also the tools to apply to art schools. So I applied to art schools in Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland at the time. So that was the launch.
Okay, into the art.
Art, yeah.
Okay, so that explains how you got into art. But what about like maybe when you were a young child? Did you work any influence either with art, but also maybe just working with your hands as a child?
Yeah. Thanks for really digging, So I grew up along the Irish coast, and I lived in 9 houses by the time I was 9. I went back once as an art project and photographed each of them.
So your family was moving from house to house?
Moving a lot, but I only went to maybe 2 schools in that same time that I was moving houses a lot. And I'm the eldest of 7, right? And it was a big family straight off. And my dad is a civil engineer that was taking jobs where houses might have come with the position, and he was also getting an opportunity. At one time, I think we had 2 houses, right? It was just ridiculous. 1970s Ireland, sort of scramble. Wouldn't have had it any other way. But I used to, we grew up on different beaches. The West Coast, Galway. I was born in Galway. I also lived a little bit on the East Coast, in Dundalk and Blackrock. And shaping things on the beach was always really important, right? And I remember always, I don't know why we had travel, brochures with hotels, and they'd show you the layout of the rooms,
Oh,
the
yeah.
bed here, one bed there, whatever. And I used to really love those graphics, but I would make those as sandcastles. And you could go in this door and you could sit on this, like I'd make floor plans
Yes, I'm
in
with
sand.
you. And
Yeah,
I
I love it.
just a little aside, I would do the same thing in our driveway with chalk. And it
Nice.
would be a life size. I mean, I was a child, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would have this is the door and this is the
Yeah.
bed. Yes, I
Yeah. So I was
haven't
making these
thought
floor
about that.
plans. There are these maps and as
Yes.
castles. Yeah. So that's something that comes to mind. But I mean, I also think what pertains a lot to my where I am today, how I organize my world or whatever. I was the eldest of seven,
Mm,
and there was always a reward for, taking care of organizing and management and
mhm.
like that sense of like being in charge a little bit, which my siblings will always refer to as, the bossy older sister, but I had to leave for a reason, obviously, right, to another continent. But I
Yep.
mean that skill set or sort of early development as a personality goes
Mhm.
hand in hand a lot of the time with, say, bringing people together, managing, and where I put a lot of my creative endeavor right now.
Yeah, I feel like I've learned so much about you in just those few stories. And but
Yes.
also kind of makes me think, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." And I love this part because, you know, people that know you very well might have never heard those stories. So,
Yeah.
it's a treat for them too, even though
Yeah.
they're your best friends. So,
Enjoy, everybody.
and we're ready to launch into okay, so you go to college, you apply with your portfolio that you worked on for 9 months with this, pre art certificate, and you go to college. And so then let's go from there.
So I moved from Donegal to Art College in Belfast in Northern Ireland, which is across the border. And it was the late 80s up until 91. So it was still a militarized border and another country in a very distinct way. And the Troubles were, as they're referred to, it was an active time. Yeah, my dad sometimes would still, apologize to me for letting me go to our college in the late 80s in Belfast, because it was seen as a dangerous time or a volatile time. But I had I think I had a little bit of depression my first year there. When I look back, I cut my hair up. I had the shortest hair I've ever had in my life. You get a little sort of butch or sort of, it's an urban context. I came from more rural Donegal. So it was a growing up experience, but ultimately Art College in Belfast was also very influenced by a British educator. There weren't many people from the Republic. I think there were 6 people from the applicants or students from the Republic, but there were definitely no teachers from the Republic when I was there. Um, I took a year out actually I did 2 years and I took a year out and I lived for 6 months in New York City just on a whim with a
Oh,
boyfriend. Yeah.
yeah.
A whim that my parents really didn't want me to,
No, of
do.
course.
Your
Of
parents
course
are going to
not.
want you to finish college,
Yeah.
undergrad, things like that. But it was, I think it informed my work in my third year when I did come back to finish my undergrad degree. I think it's important as an artist to live life and to have something to talk about. So
Yeah.
it was
I mean, it's
my,
important at anybody
oh
to
yeah,
live life,
sure,
but
sure,
especially
sure.
for an
Yeah.
artist
Take
because
those
yeah.
journeys. So it took me 4 years to do the 3-year degree, and after that, I traveled more, right? But eventually, I mentioned earlier, I jumped over to the US on this experience that was in Louisiana, and it was a cross-border experience that was sort of funded by US and German dollars, and it's euros now. I don't know if it was yeah, must have been euros for Germany too, but just cross-border initiative. And the entity in Southern Ireland or the Republic chose artists of all people to support with that initiative. And so artists were sent. And along with that, some colleagues of mine.
Mm-hmm.
That Louisiana experience led me over then more permanently to the US.
And so were you making art when you were in Louisiana?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to have access to welding, which is something that I had a less hands-on experience with in undergrad in Belfast. I feel like my comparison with the US and educational system and the European, and in this case, Ireland. So if you think about, if you go to school here in the US,
Yeah.
get a lot of hands-on and process. You're
Mm-hmm.
taught to weld in a sculpture class. You use tools. And in Ireland, you don't, it's like a lot more territorial. There's the workshop with the tools, and the welder has a lab-coated white coat technician. And you work with a technician. It's like highly monitored. And part of that is cultural tradition, part of it is safety. It's just the bureaucratic institution and a cultural tradition, I suppose, of how things are. And so my undergrad was a studio space, more like I was a grad student in the US.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're given a studio space to make.
Mm-hmm.
You bring in your materials, you make. And so if you needed to use the tools for something, it would be temporarily for you book some time, you're with a lab tech who would help you. And so there was a different structure. And so when I came to Louisiana that time, I was like 23 or 24 or something. And I really wanted to have that access to the equipment. And meanwhile, the group that were hosting us at the university in Louisiana were showing us like ceramic paint, plate painting, like maybe we'd set the artists up doing something like that. And I said, no, I need access to welding. So they researched that a little bit, and they've set me up with access to welding.
Oh,
I had
great.
access the university. They didn't even really know what they had as an art department. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that was a learning curve for them, even though they
Mm-hmm.
came from that university. It's funny how art exists in universities and sometimes isn't, the premier, like what we
Yeah.
project as ourselves.
You're right.
Yeah, and so I had a studio space in the ROTC building as well.
Is
And
that because the
building.
welders were there?
No, it was the summer. It was,
Oh, okay.
I think it was off season a little bit. I don't
Okay.
remember. There were
I
classes.
mean,
I can't really remember. It's a long time ago. It was
yeah,
when,
and
but
also
I can't
there's certain
remember if it was in semesters or
semantics.
not.
There's certain semantics also that don't really, it's, you know, but so
Yeah.
you were welding, were you making large compositions or what was
Yeah, no,
the
I'd
work about?
started with encouragement from folks there. I did start working on a 20-foot tall submarine. Yeah. And I had been
Whoa.
making, submarines out of lead, and I was
Okay.
putting them together in grad school, but they were goldfish bowl size,
Yeah.
or they were human size, right?
Okay.
In
Yeah.
mid-size, if you like.
Yeah.
I was working with metal in my way, and I was working with imagery that dealt with, water submersibles, paper boats, things like
Hmm.
that, and
Hmm.
turning that to welding and the scope of like scrap yards in Louisiana. You get piles of things like um, serviette dispensers, like the boxes that you see
Okay.
in diners, and it's like, oh, what are they?
Yeah.
And because it was like this glut of material, which you wouldn't see much in Ireland. I mean,
Okay.
the lead I got in undergrad in Belfast was probably stolen off, the roofs, and it was available in the scrapyard, and it was a
Yeah.
pliable material. It was my entryway into, I suppose, in some regard. Besides found metal from bonfires and things like that I would
Mm.
bring in.
Yeah.
So I was attracted to metal early on in undergrad, but not necessarily through the process of being taught to weld, for example, or given the chops to
Yeah.
understand how to control it or manipulate it, etc.
But you
I
sought
made
it
my way
out.
through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then where do we go from here?
Yeah. So that 10-week experience, I went back to Ireland and just attempted to get another visa to come back.
Okay.
And I entered on another tourist visa
Okay.
at a time when the World Cup was being played in the US, and a lot of Irish people were coming down, like young boys, in the elevator with me from
Yeah.
the consulate in Dublin. And I had my hard-earned 6-month tourist visa to re-enter, and they had a 10-year multiple entry visa to the US, and they were just going over for a football game. So I thought that was just a comparison and coming down in the lift from the offices there that I will remember. But
Yeah. I can
and so
understand
I
why.
applied to grad school when I was here on my
Okay.
tourist visa, and then ended up going to the University of New Orleans, and
Yeah.
then transitioning to a student visa there. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah.
then what did the work look like in grad school?
I think, I started bringing in that, was it 20-foot high that I said? Is it 20-foot high submarine that I was making? Yeah, I brought that into grad school, but I continued exploring a lot of different media. I would print make as well. I did a minor in printmaking, so that using intaglio primarily, and so etching and shaping plates, printing plates. Um, so
Which is
that
also metal.
narrative, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think printmaking and sculpture are very connected.
Mhm.
I liked multiples too, and so printmaking lends itself to that. Yeah. So a lot of I think if you want to have a sort of sense of the uh, content or breadth of the imagery, there was this sense of things being recognizable, recycled and upcycled, and linking to submersibles that could be sea anemones. They had thorns and spikes, but it could be armor or self-defense, but they were enclosed sort of protective spaces.
Okay.
If that,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm with you.
yeah. So I liked hinges and portholes a lot too, and that sort of stuff. So I was cranking out hinge things. I was casting a lot of bronze and aluminum, as well as fabricating. So I really love metal fabrication. Yeah.
Was grad school your first introduction into pouring molten metal?
I had done some bronze in Belfast, but it was
Okay.
done for me. I get to make the wax.
Yes, I
I get to
see.
clean it up afterwards, but I watched from very remotely the
Mhm.
process.
And so it's interesting because I'm seeing so in George Beasley's interview, he referenced this same kind of theme. Obviously, he's talking about a different country, but yes, because he did exchange student kind of hosting, and he would talk about the way that the students from Europe would come over and how he would also send his students to Europe so that they could buff up their theory chops, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so
And I would say
um
Belfast was quite conceptual. The
mhm,
way they taught was
yeah.
concept was critical,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
therefore it could be very minimalist, and it
Hmm.
wasn't about process in the same way.
Yeah.
Whereas Dublin, the NCAD college, which I also applied to but didn't get accepted into, but that was rather more, I suppose, a traditional art school process that you might in that bronze casting and painting and such was taught.
Okay.
Maybe I'm presuming bronze was taught there, but
Well, it
I just
doesn't
thought it was
matter.
more
We don't.
traditional, less
Yeah.
actual
We
than
may never
modern
know
times.
exactly.
Yeah, and
But
that was the
okay,
influence,
so
different
you had
countries.
seen it and then you actually participated in grad school like with more hands-on.
Yeah, and I
Uh-huh.
was a graduate teaching assistant from the
Okay.
beginning. Even though I'd
Okay.
never really lived in the country, I was teaching life drawing straight away, drawing classes, and
Fantastic.
I was
Yeah.
teaching sculpture.
Okay.
So, it was right in the deep end.
Yeah, jumped right
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Okay. So then as we kind of like wrap up grad school, where I mean, you already kind of told us in your interview in your introduction, um, the like broad stroke story, but it's kind of like how did we get from grad school to iron?
And so as a caster and also building my own equipment to cast metal nomadically, with a loose-knit group of other sculptors, some of whom I'm still in touch with who live locally and stuff, which is pretty sweet, 30 years later to be friends with. Um, so when you're a caster, when you're working with foundry processes, it's not a big step to show up with molds at an iron pour. But really, where I wasn't exposed to iron. It wasn't something that was done at the University of New Orleans. It wasn't done in Belfast. I'm trying to think. Well, it was actually when I moved to Denver, so 20 something years ago. And I think probably through Iron Tribe, and David Lobdell might have been my first iron pours. So he's my mentor in iron, and as you know, also part of the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, right? So we're 5 hours drive north of New Mexico, Las Vegas. Um, and yeah, I would just bring students and head down there all the time from when I started teaching here at the University of Colorado, Denver. And then didn't have a furnace yet, but in 2005, I invited Hopi Breton from California, and she's a good pal I used to know in New Orleans. She used to cast bronze with and iron with so I suppose I saw iron pours, but I don't know if I saw any when I was there. But she was a good friend, and she worked with Barry Bailey. She would help
Okay.
him with his heads and casting or whatever. But she was an art history major from another Loyola, another school. She wasn't at Tulane, but so the people I knew were doing iron,
Yeah.
but I wasn't a practitioner until really in Denver. And I brought Hopi here to the campus, and in 5 days we built a furnace and we poured
Wow.
probably 1,000 pounds in the first pour. Just ran out of iron in the last mold. Lovely.
Wow.
And she went home white-faced and exhausted, and her husband was like, "What happened to you?" And it's like, well, we wrung her dry.
Yeah.
So that was great. And that furnace is called Irish Luck. And we don't really use her a lot anymore because we then transitioned. We have two furnaces. One is a coupolette that was built with Matt Toole as a visiting artist in 2014 at the university. So
Okay.
9 years later, we built a second furnace, and that was an exquisite coupolette, as in we students built different parts. And then when Matt came, it was all assembled.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
What
that's a
an
bath
interesting way
melter
to
that's
do
a
it
little,
too. Yeah.
what's that?
I said, what an interesting way to do that too, is to have students build different things and then it
Yeah.
all comes together.
Yeah. And I think Matt had done that before as well. He was great. Yeah. It was his second year visiting. In 2013, he built a lever with my students, one of his levers. And so we have one
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
that we use sometimes. Yeah. And set it up and pour from like 8 feet high. And it has a 15-foot radius or diameter. So you
Yeah.
can have your tall molds out on your periphery and target some works at different times. Yeah.
Fantastic. So,
Yeah.
so smart too. It's genius. Yeah.
Well, and it's so visible. And that speaks to, you've got two schools of thought, which we tend to merge together in our conferences for the Western, but you have your performance
Yeah.
pours, and then you have your production pours.
Mhm.
And we do keep them separate, in that
Yeah.
regard. Or performance work is sometimes done after the production pour
Yeah.
if you're doing it all in one go, as a rule of thumb, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We get the serious stuff done and then we have a little fun.
are you saying performance isn't serious? Don't be heard saying that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know.
Teasing
Oh
you. Totally teasing
no.
you.
It's a good point though. I have to be careful. I mean, but
Deborah,
performance
who's
is,
listening? Yeah.
yeah, and it also is, it is fun. Like if it wasn't fun, they wouldn't do it, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Well, production
Um,
is fun too.
yes. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all fun.
It's like, I mean, we're all in it, like to our eyeballs, everything. Okay, so then we talked about the iron, but do you want to talk about how your work was either incorporating cast iron into it or how it worked its way in? And so
Hmm.
you said you think it was going down to Las Vegas, New Mexico and
Yeah.
pouring with David.
Yeah.
And so was that like you heard his name in the
Oh,
circuit and then
he's a
just,
Louisiana person,
yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
there's a lineage of who knows who, and,
Okay.
yeah, and, it was easy. And that's actually, Iron Tribe is where I met Matt Toole for the first time.
Okay.
It's where I met Toby,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Flores from Kansas
Yeah.
and others, right? And so where I am in Denver is really nice, and that Laramie, where Dave and Ashley are, is
Yeah.
about 2 hours north.
Okay.
Dave Lobdell is 5 hours south, and
Hmm.
then Kansas Hayes is 5 hours east.
Yeah.
And it's nice. Most people have to come into Denver sometimes, right? So
Yeah.
it's a social
Yeah.
hub for iron,
Mm.
fairly localized, right? And I know things are closer together, maybe in the East Coast, but we have our own little hub here, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
fantastic.
then, with my own practice, my own work, I'm trying to think what I used to bring down maybe to Iron Tribe to cast, and I can't really remember
Hmm.
much what I was doing. I do like suitcases and enclosed forms. I think it stems from the submarines. I don't work with that imagery anymore, but I
Hmm.
like purses and handbags and things that
Yeah.
also snap shut in different ways, right? Um,
Containment.
buckles.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so but I do recall getting David Lobdell up here to do a workshop maybe in 2005, not long after we built the furnace with Hopi. And it was to do, bonded sand workshop because we were all set up for ceramic shell because
Oh,
we were
okay.
bronze, right? But
Yeah.
we weren't set up for sand. And we used to use linocure and other,
Mm.
chemistry initially. But we got our concrete mixer and yeah, Lobdell. I think what I cast was a flamenco. Yeah,
Okay.
pink flamingo.
Yeah. I've
Iron,
seen
David Lobdell.
recently, I've
Yeah.
seen the swan,
Swans. I have
the
a pair of
cast iron
swans.
swan,
Yeah.
but that might be jumping forward quite a bit.
Yeah. A while. I did those in Alfred with coral.
All right. So, I mean, I guess we're kind of like where you are. I always like to hear stories of kind of specific iron pours, or I always um enjoy if somebody has like a striking moment where at an iron pour they saw it for the first time, or they were like, I gotta get my butt into gear and figure out how to do this, or I want to be a part of this sort of a team. Like, do you have
Yeah.
any stories like that?
I think it was Iron Tribe, really, when you think about it. I mean, it's the most relaxed. Have you been to Iron Tribe?
I went to my very first Iron Tribe in 2023. So it was a little over a year ago, and I was blown away. I mean, yes,
And it
so
was the last one
relaxed. To be seen, to be seen.
of its ilk.
Of yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Of but there may be I'm kind of hoping for
Iron isn't leaving Las Vegas.
no.
No.
Yes, I'm kind
No.
of hoping for maybe a little passing of the torch,
Yeah.
changing of the guard, and maybe it will.
No, but when you go down to New Mexico and you pass over the Raton Pass, from Colorado into New Mexico, and it says the land of enchantment and that view. And then you go,
Yes.
there's the Montezuma Hot Springs, where they're just outside of Las Vegas. And then there's the Plaza Hotel, and it's just
Yes.
iron folk all around, and there's kids
Yes.
running around. It's just, there's nothing more family. It was really good. I met James Hayes there too for the first time, Cork.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like he talks about in his interview, he talks about how, somebody says you got to get to New Mexico because they're casting iron there. And so he just went and knew no one and just showed up, and he was all, welcomed with open arms and stuff. And I just think that that's wild that he
mhm.
had no idea and he just went. And I love that. I love his story and how it's
Yeah, yeah.
wild.
And meanwhile, I was told by Lobdell, it's like we're in the bar in the Plaza Hotel. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that Irish dude is at the last table back there, So I made my way through the crowd and
Yeah.
hey, hi, I hear you from Ireland, right? So yeah, that's how James and I met too. And actually, I remember the exhibition because Dave Lobdell was great curating an exhibition every time, and
He
it's sort of
is.
that
Yeah.
early, if you like, format and influence on what the Western is, too. But and many of our conferences, so they're all have similarities, right? And we know what works.
Oh, yeah.
And but James was showing two cast small canvas stretchers,
Okay.
blank
Sure.
canvas stretchers, iron. They were beautiful.
Yeah.
I think he was showing them even in reverse. I can't remember. Just, yeah, they were gorgeous.
Yeah.
Two little ones. Where are they now, James? I wouldn't mind one. Um, so yeah, Dave Lobdell's Iron is the Iron Tribe is really nurturing, and I remember it that way, and I make sure to carry students down with me as
Mhm.
much as I can every spring. I was there every spring. I didn't miss
Mhm.
any Iron Tribes after that, and I'd say my yeah, I can't put a date on it. I
Yeah,
I
it
know
doesn't
I
matter.
built my furnace in 2005, but
Yeah.
I think I was going to Iron Tribe before then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So when you run your furnace, so you recently ran it in the
Yeah, we just
in
did a
the past.
pour, and I'm in an urban downtown Denver campus with no footprint. I have
Mhm.
three institutions on one campus who've all outgrown each other.
Mhm.
And we had COVID, and it just like ended up being like a strange period of dryness, I suppose. We did a pour during the pandemic that was pretty quiet,
Mhm.
masked,
Yep.
15, 20 of us quietly. But it was really nice to teach maybe 30 new beginning students in the visual arts, not even sculpture majors, but I had 30 people do an iron for the first time. And some of those kids were there from dawn to dusk, like 8 a.m., 9:30 p.m. Bit shell shocked. Maybe
Mhm.
not never having a day like this before.
Yeah.
And they will remember it. It was really an important day, I think. It was really important. I loved it. I love that strata of teaching, if you like, art making, and that community
Yeah.
social aspect.
Mhm.
Those three things together give me a lot of satisfaction, and iron pours do that. Um, One other thing that does that for me turns out to be performance art. And we just recently had our 12th performance art week here in Denver, and it was just brilliant. The growth and complexity of it, and the artists that are making work,
Mhm.
and being able to go and socialize and see art, and also be teaching that, introducing performance art. It's just the same. It works for me like iron pours do, is what I
Mhm.
realized. So now I know what makes me happy, which it usually involves a lot of work, where I like bringing it together, I
Yeah.
suppose,
Yeah.
managing as much as attending one, right?
Mhm.
So
And we know where that comes from now,
yeah, eldest
from
of
your
seven,
from your
hardworking farming background. Well, my
yeah.
dad was a farmer, I
Yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah.
but he was born on a farm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, but I have those genes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's see. I mean, we've done a great job. We've run through pretty much everything. Is there anything that because I want to talk to you kind of a lot about your project in Germany.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so but I don't want to cut off anything in your
Yeah.
kind of line of
So
work.
yeah, I think, I suppose it's might be nice to talk just about being an immigrant and going back to Europe a
Yes.
lot, right? And I can just jump into that.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds
Yeah,
great.
because I was mentioning James Hayes, and
Yeah.
as an Irish person living over in the US for as long as I have, one way I sort of figured out to make sure I got home fairly frequently after I realized, oh, I haven't been home in 4 years. And then when I did get home, mom says, no, 4 years, 4 months, and so many days. And I was like, oh dear, okay.
Yeah.
Um, I make an effort, right, to be there at least once a year if I can. My parents are in their 80s. I have five siblings who live in the same town, more or less,
Hmm.
and one sibling who lives in Germany. But um, I started doing a study abroad through my university when I first started the job here at CU. So back in 2002, when I started to run a month-long study abroad program on the west coast of Ireland, not where my family live, another part of the island, but it's pretty magic. It's through the facility that is the Byrne College of Art, but that region, that valley, has DNA in the 5,000-year-old remains. It's the same as the DNA in the locals, and it's just this archaeological magic haven of a valley. It's really beautiful. Don't tell anyone about it. No, it's already well known. It's not that far from the Cliffs of Moher. It's near Galway City where I was born. So it's been really nice over the years to bring small, groups of 10, 12
Yeah.
students and a month of site specificity. So I make work back on the beaches, right? I'm making work in the landscape, and the students are too. And I always thought that work was very separate from what I do in the US with my iron pours, with my metal fabrication, etc., because it's the landscape influences what you do a little bit, right? But
Hmm.
I found that they are feeding each other, but it took me a long time to realize how. And I really, 20 years later, I'm still bringing students to Ireland, still doing this month in Ireland that is site specificity, the value of the camera, and the framing the aperture in the landscape and scale, and just the play that comes with doing impromptu things because you've got 3 hours on this in this field on this
Yeah.
beach, and it's
Yeah.
raining and you have your backpack and you want to have your lunch already because you got your sandwich in there. Um, and so it's like, what'll I make? So everybody has the rug pulled out from under them, including the teacher, when you're in that sort of context. And it can be really investigative, experimental, and the importance of it might not reveal itself till later. And so small things that have happened there have influenced a lot of my imagery over here, whether it's iron, whether it's wallpapers, whether it's, I do a lot of mixed material, small scale
Hmm.
and large scale works, which is very hard to organize on a website, but or how to present yourself, right? So iron is something that happened in '05 with me, and it fuels your work a huge amount and fuels your time.
Yeah.
It's very demanding, not only in organizing, but just being part of that whole community. It's so welcoming that it's gregarious, it's big.
Yeah.
Um, but other things happen in my work as well, right? So I it was really nice besides going back as an educator and bringing students, but I curated an exhibition here in Denver that was called Hybrid, and it got some partial funding from the Irish Arts Council because I brought um, 7 Irish artists over, and I had 7 US artists,
Hmm.
but some of them were French and Japanese and Irish as well. But that's what the US
Okay.
is, right?
Okay.
Um, and so we all made work on location here and exhibited at Red Line. It was called Hybrid. And then a couple of years later, I managed to get all 14 artists together again, the US and the Irish ones in Ireland, and
Oh,
had them
right.
make work there.
Great.
So I was like my own over back, making work there, making work here. I had 14 artists pursue the same question I had.
Hmm.
How does place influence your work? So that completed a sort of cycle of questioning for me that I
Yeah.
felt like it is all interconnected. And going back for James Hayes's iron ore, which his love of iron and his management of iron in Ireland, which I totally respect, based on our earlier mentioning how there's so much cultural tradition and bureaucracy, and it's not in the psyche that you could have this sort of hands-on experience safely for a lot of people. So kudos to James for making it happen in Ireland. And I've been happened to well, I was a keynote for one of his iron events, and then I happened to be there also um, more than once. So I've been to a few of them, and it's been really amazing to have iron happen in Ireland. And so my brother lives in Germany, back to
Okay.
Germany.
Yes.
I am getting back to it.
Yeah, no, I'm
Irish
with you.
people are
I'm
storytellers, but
Yes.
you do encourage storytelling on this podcast too, though, right?
I
A little
absolutely
bit.
do.
So I have a brother who's the youngest in the family. I'm the oldest, and we're the two that live abroad. And I call us the bookends. We're sort of similar in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and sort of entrepreneurial or have ideas and actually do make them happen because of willpower and
Hmm.
we're
Tenacity.
doers. He twinned the small town he's in Germany with my hometown in Ireland. The castle in Rudolstadt goes green once a year on St. Patrick's Day, suddenly, since he's living there. Things like that.
Yeah.
So he sees me travel with iron, and he has been living in a part of the world in former East Germany that's um, has a huge steel production, did a lot of casting, iron. It's um, a part of the world that has this high industrial history or large expansive history, and a lot of it is about chemistry and as well. But it's also a very rural, idyllic, organized part of the world where, this is the industrial estate and this is the veld and the countryside, and it's really um, opposite worlds they seem, but anyway,
Yeah, because I feel like usually when we think of industry, we think of maybe city.
and urban, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is former East Germany is just it's so beautiful. Thüringen is the region, and it's a lot of small towns and a lot of burgs and castles in all these towns. And he really was encouraging me to come over and do iron there since he saw me do iron, because he kept driving past this amazingly large ladle that was on this hillside in a big, gantry on display.
Mhm. Like as a
And it
remnant, an
was
artifact.
huge. Yeah, it was an artifact that was installed as an artwork or a marker for in the landscape by the big steel works there. Yeah.
But maybe had been used before in
Oh,
industry
it's from their factories,
and then
totally. Yeah.
discarded, but instead of
Or
discard,
yeah,
it's then
yeah.
okay.
It's celebrated, displayed. It's a
Yeah.
public piece, and it's so huge. So anyway, I said no. I'm not working with family, right? It's hard. You never work with family, don't you
Yeah,
know that?
it's hard.
But many years later, several years later, I said, okay, only if I do it with a couple other people. So
Mhm.
I invited colleagues that I just like to work with, and that happened to
Yeah.
be, in my mind, Tamsi Ringler and Toby Flores, and they said, yeah, sure, we'll go with you. And so yeah, it was a bit of an adventurous journey, but we met with the local towns, we met with the local industries, and it was 2019. So guess what
Mm-hmm.
happened?
Yeah.
We all had a pandemic, and so there was a little hiatus in that,
Yeah.
first identity of what might happen. We were thinking about an international festival or something sort of big and public, and building a furnace would be part of that. What happened was we went back after the pandemic, and we've been back 3 years in a row, and with Toby and students from um, Fort Hays State University, an amazing little furnace was made called Deborah,
Uh-huh.
and we've test runner, then we've runner, and this year, 2024, I'm
Yeah.
going to go this year with Michal from Poland is coming over with two of his master's students.
Oh, fantastic. I'm wearing his shirt.
Oh,
I
sweet.
don't know if you can, for
It's
some
hidden by the
reason.
mic there. You're going
Okay.
to have to
Yeah.
stand up.
If you
Nice.
can see it.
Yeah,
He gave
sweet.
this to me in the West at the Western in South Dakota.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sweet. I think I
And
have one now that you mentioned it.
you
I
probably do.
must
I
find
mean,
it.
and it's funny because when I was choosing my little attire thing, because I kind of curate it a little bit every time, um, I just had a wild hair, and I was like, I'm gonna wear that shirt. And then you bring
Yeah,
okay, so
nice.
he was there.
No, he's going to come
Oh, he's
this year.
gonna
Yeah.
okay.
So, I
Oh,
mean,
he's
it's
gonna
a
come this
commitment
year.
to, I know where a lot of us are in academia where you have your window of research in the summer.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to get home to Ireland, and I teach the study abroad in Ireland in the summers, but it's every other summer. But
Hmm.
I've been going to Germany every summer as well lately, and it's quite a commitment, right? And it was nice to share that with Toby and Tamsi um, for the last few years.
Yeah.
And we have on the ground, my brother's not that involved other than like, hey, great idea, come on over, and introductions all around. And so
Yeah.
it's really great because it has grown from the community up through contacts with the
Hmm.
city and with businesses and with industry. And they are intrigued with us having a nomadic version of the blast furnace that they don't really pour a lot of industrial iron there anymore. There is a museum nearby that has a cupola that they don't run, but they do a lot of aluminum and sand pours. So we are speaking their language,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
we're doing it through art and education. And that's sort of what has formulated it's industry art education. We work with kids there.
Yeah.
And there's a British artist there that's been a great liaison with the schools, and she's on the ground operations, Jess Fuller. Hey, Jess, thanks for all you do. And so, yeah, Jess is a friend of my brother's. And so it's almost sort of from the ground up developing into a symposium that will hopefully grow. So the furnace is now owned by this charity, and it's on top of this hill, and we're becoming part of the routine in that community, and generally having a small exhibition in a small town. The town is called Rudolstadt, if you
Yeah.
want to look it up. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've just been careful about where we fit in that community. We're not running it as a conference per se. It's not the international where we get to know everybody, run a big event, and then we pull out. We're really trying to build it into that community where that community run it as well, and we own it. And we're shepherding that sort of interest between the schools, etc. And yeah, so former East Germany has been very interesting. I mean, Russian is maybe the second language and not English if you're my age or older, right? And yeah, um, so it's I've just purchased a domain name. Yay,
Mm-hmm.
the Deb report, right? So there will be a site. It is growing, and
Absolutely.
yeah, we're finding things that everything's there. The scrapyard's there, the
Mm-hmm.
industry is there, and we're intriguing people with what we're doing. So we
Yeah.
just
And from our conversations kind of previous to just this specific interview, it does sound like and I've talked to some other people like Braden and Maddie, and it sounds like it is growing, but
yeah,
also it's interesting because iron pores that some of us know, like the really big ones. So like Iron Tribe, I feel like Iron Tribe is very intimate, but it's also very well established. And so a lot of people will show up. A lot of us will know Sloss. A lot of us know a couple of, the international conference, and they're large. Like I want to say also like Kelly Ludeking, has that one down on the
on the
farm
farm.
poor.
Yeah,
And that's a pretty big event,
yeah,
and I was talking to somebody earlier this week about, they don't always start off big. That's just what
yeah,
we maybe
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But a lot of times, even when David was talking about getting iron, in New Mexico, it was small.
Well, and I also
And
think
then
back to Latvia, where the international was in
yes,
2014 with Tamsi. You had Carl and Ken Payne had built
yes,
a furnace over there, what,
yeah,
15 or 20 years prior,
yeah,
and it was their, joy experience exchange,
yes,
with
yeah,
introducing iron somewhere, and yeah, and then many years later, it became a site for the international. So.
yeah.
Um, there's no way I want to railroad and manage. I don't want to railroad a community. I'm building
No,
it from the ground up, or we are building it from the ground
yeah,
up. And
which I think is very
it's a little
respectful.
gem, and
Yeah.
it's shaping itself, right?
Yes.
So
And that's
yeah,
beautiful.
which is pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when do you leave for that? Because now school is out.
Oh, yeah, I am. I'm spending a lot of time in Europe this summer. I'm in Northern Ireland actually curating, not curating, sort of curating. I'm part of a group called Art Knots, which
Uh-huh.
is sort of Boulder centric initially, but it's a little broader and more international. But there's about 50 members, and they exhibit 3 times a year in countries that maybe aren't typically the art centers either or venues, but places of contention can be part of the mission.
Mm.
So, having come from Northern Ireland and being an Art Not member for the last 3 years or so, I really felt responsible towards um, helping lead their relationship with Northern Ireland. It's the first time they're showing in Northern Ireland. So we have 2 venues, one in
Hmm.
Derry and one in Belfast. And
Okay.
we're going to do some social practice sort of workshops. A few of us are traveling over there in person. So I'll be doing
Hmm.
that first this summer. I'm leaving on the 18th of May, and then I'm off to Germany. We're pouring metal on the 28th. And
Yeah. Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
So.
so I also wanted to talk about your artistic practice and kind of like your body of work now.
Yeah. I really am finding that I'm attracted to objects. I mean, in general, I mean, it's a like if I think back to Ireland, I don't know if it comes from that a little bit, but archaeological adventures, every journey in Ireland was always like, get out in this field and look at this and whatever, and it's that sort of country. It's been populated for 5,000 years and heavily farmed. So there's a lot of leftovers from many, many, many generations that are amazing to think about the lineage and the history and tactile, maybe standing stone or, a dolmen that has been touched by so many people, right? Time. And I find that have a great affinity with anything that's, flattened on the ground, even, I'll pick things up a lot. I'm always recycling, always like I can be attracted. The older and the more abandoned something looks like, whether it's a house even or whatever, I'm probably find more aesthetic. So I sometimes term myself as a sort of contemporary archaeologist because I'm picking up all this detritus and stuff. But I'm attracted to the upcycling that happens when I hoard my stuff, right? A little bit. That's a confession.
No, I mean, I feel it the same because then I'll be doing something and I'll be like, oh,
I have
this
it right
fits.
there. Yeah.
And it fits perfectly and to
Yeah.
something completely unrelated.
And I mean, we creatively problem solving is very much part of art making.
Yes.
And yeah, finding solutions. So anyway, I'm interested in multiples. I'm interested in found components, and yeah, I've been saving plastic bottle caps since Una was a kid. For her first day of counting to 100, and she had to bring in 100 things. Her mom sent her in with 100 bottle caps, that she
Yeah.
had 100 of, and so I'm like I have a work I'm preparing right now for the Arvada Art Center. They have 32 sculptors responding to a call that is like a 4 foot by 4 foot space, right? So
Okay.
yeah, I'll that's on the go, and it's upcycled garden fencing and cast iron and cast bronze and plastic bottle tops, and it's like a little security fencing sort of, tower
Yeah.
form. I have a solo show coming up in Denver in November at the Emmanuel Art Gallery, which I'm
Okay.
really excited about. That
Fantastic.
it's really nice to have a footprint locally. When you make a lot of installation and you're traveling work and you make iron and it's heavy,
Yeah.
what you show and where has physical limits sometimes and prohibitive, like economic limits. You can't rent trucks as economically as you used to drive across the country, do big installations. So it's nice to have a playground in your backyard.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. It's going to be my mini Whitney to do. It's a really nice venue.
Good.
Thanks, Emmanuel Art Gallery.
Yeah. And is that
Um,
going to be like a survey of your body of work or?
no, I'm working on it. I don't like Iron 50 was in Minnesota
Yes.
in 2019, I think.
Hmm. Or I'm not
Um,
sure exactly the date, but
yeah, celebrating Wayne and
yes.
50 years of casting continuously in iron at that university. So I happened to be invited graciously with James Hayes and Michal from Poland.
Mhm.
They were looking at sort of the international influence of iron. And so even though I reside in the US as an Irish person, we were the three sort of guest artists. So I did
Yeah.
a, a performance. It was centered on performance too, but it was all about labor, which we think we like. Um, so I produced the alphabet in iron brands, and produced emojis, which I never use when I text. So it was a critique on sort of that, and I ended up fabricating 13 ironing boards there on site, and then the irons were used to brand messaging, graphics, and messaging onto the boards. So that was the housewife at the ironing board or the graffiti project that I did. So it was like a performance, but it was also a production of tools in a way,
Yeah.
future works. So
Yeah.
I'm making some work with those for this solo show, which I'm calling Housekeeping. Housekeeping, I think, is what I'm calling that show. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it could still be in
So
the works.
I'm using text and language and recycled 3-ring binders and mops and mop buckets and thinking about climate, thinking about
Hmm.
plastics, thinking about environment, thinking about a lot of things like that. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Lots of things to,
Yeah.
keep hot on the
And a little bit
horizon.
going on with the public art world as well. I have a public art piece ongoing that I'm
Okay.
having fabricated that is its own managerial exchange of many
I can't,
emails
yeah.
over
Hmm.
time. Yeah.
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 And so what is that? Is it going to be installed somewhere specific?
Yeah, it's for the city of Aurora, and it's I'm actually upcycling H&M shopping racks that
Oh,
are
wow.
stainless
Okay.
steel. They're really well made, and working with repeat circles and star shapes and whatever
Hmm.
the feet of them. So again, I'm always looking for like always thinking about I don't know. I just saw an exhibition today too at the Denver Art Museum. It was some amazing work. One of them is a landscape aerial view of the Ganges River. Sorry, I'm not going to name the artist right now
It's
because
fine.
I
Yeah.
photographed the artist
Yeah.
names to teach students later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was made from plastics garnered from the Ganges into fibers, and it was woven in India as a tapestry. It's a carpet wall piece. It's just this beautiful photographic map that's made from the materials that are taken from, so that activism with art, I think there's always that sort of messaging going on in my work. And with this H&M clothing rack things, it's just like, oh, these get used as a solution for this. The city seal for Aurora is a 5-pointed star. The legs, the feet on these racks are 5 points. Put two together, it's a star. And so it's sort of an abstract, somewhat abstracted plant form solution to the call, and it's nice to be pursuing something like that too. I think collaboration can help you work beyond your um, trajectory and scope as an individual. And I think public art pushes you to do things too. I think iron pushes you to do things in ways you wouldn't normally do. So and just all of those avenues and journeys are open, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the stretching of ourselves is helps us develop and grow. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Or else it's the Spanish Inquisition and the rack, and it's too much. I'm doing too much.
maybe, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always moments. I feel like it's an ebb and a flow.
Yeah.
So I think that this would be a great time to maybe talk about some advice that you have. But
Yeah.
you wrote something that I feel like I wrote it down as I was looking at you, and I just was like, I have to write this down right now, but I can't look away. And so I just wrote it, and it
See if you
looks,
can read your writing
I
now.
know, I'm like, what? But it says the importance reveals itself later.
Yeah.
Ooh, I was like, oh, I don't know. I really
Yeah.
lean into that. I mean, that's a sentiment that it gets me right in my soul is like, we don't even know. It'll
Yeah.
reveal
Yeah.
itself later. And
Yeah.
so you were talking about, I think, making things on the beach
Yeah.
in Ireland with the students. But so you didn't say it in a way that it was advice, but that
Yeah.
that could
Like,
be.
thanks for
And
picking on that. I think it's a really nice um lead into that the whole idea that I mean, even as a teacher, right? You don't know how you're influencing your students, and you're driven to help them
yeah,
see what they're doing as much, and give them scope, right?
yeah,
And a lot of the time, your students can make some amazing things, but they don't even realize how amazing they are, right? They're just not ready for that. Um, and maybe they will later, and maybe they won't. I mean, it depends where folks go, but sometimes it's a word or an expression that you say, or an attitude, or just being who you are that's more important than what you teach. So yeah. I think even with making our own work, you write artist statements all the time, partly because a gallery is asking and you're translating your work into the written language. I mean, it is a translation which changes because the format has changed. Visual art is visual art, it's its own language. but your relationship to your work changes because of time. When you rewrite artist statements, but work that you're reshowing, often your artist statement is going to change. You have another perception. You see it more clearly, or you've changed.
Yeah, your
And
relationship with
important.
that
Yeah.
work may have changed.
Yeah. Um, I think writing and about what you're doing and keeping sketchbooks is super important. Like when my students don't always like it, but I have like 25% of a grade every time on a research sketchbook and journal.
Yeah.
And that's process and it's
Mhm.
receipts and
It's, yeah,
it's
record
your
keeping
bloody
and
finger rubbed on the page, whatever you want to put in there. But you're looking at a, a slew of stuff in relation to your work because I love dialogue around art. I think it's really exciting.
and important and important.
Yeah.
And so one kind of way that I like to prompt people to give advice or to, you know, relinquish more advice is what's something that maybe some advice that someone gave to you when you were younger that you found very useful, or what's advice that you would give to yourself, your younger self?
Laura, that's super hard. That means self-reflection and
That's too
critique.
much, too much.
Yeah.
We've
But
gone long enough.
I mean, I think it's important to, just stay open in your creative process.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, all of us, I suppose, as artists, we're still making, we're still thinking. It's always fresh. That's what's important about it, that you're always investigating and always thinking. And it's the most satisfying
Yeah.
pursuit that you can really. I'm very lucky. I'm lucky I'm an artist. I'm lucky I'm supported by academia and then I can impart a love of art and visual art to anyone that I encounter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really important to me. So I did not do what I was expected to do as a young person. I think today a lot of people think only maybe a certain, maybe graphic design or illustration or computer generated artwork is where they need to be and not in our traditional plastic arts, for
Hmm.
example. Culturally, I think there's a lot of weight, and maybe there always was, right? Because I
Hmm.
had that conversation with my parents. Art's a hobby. Why are you going to university for it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to pursue and be open to what actually makes you happy and get, what is your passion, not where you're going to get a job, because you're going
Mhm.
to find your job,
Absolutely.
find your career. So that's my advice.
Okay.
Do what you
Thank you.
care to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And be lucky. I mean, it's like hard. Some people never find it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. And we want yeah. And it's and it's sad. I don't want to end on that note though.
Oh, it's not sad. It's woo. It's
Yeah.
Epiphany.
I don't want to end on the like some people never find it. But we do. We did.
Yeah.
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 All right. So I think it's I'm ready to go on over to the after show. How does that sound?
Yeah. That sounds
I
great.
mean, let me
Yeah.
just take a look at I just wanted to let me just look and see if there's anything that we missed. I mean, I think you've covered everything and then these optional questions or follow-up questions. It's really just is there anything else that you want to talk about before we go on over?
Well, I feel like I don't think any of us are used to this much talking about ourselves or our focus.
Mhm.
We've managed to cover a fair amount.
Yeah.
Um,
Then that's it.
Nothing. I don't feel like anything's missing per
Nothing.
se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well then we're gonna go over to the after show. So this is when I'll just say thank you, Rian, for doing this interview and chatting with me for this long and about your life. It's been inspiring and educational. I know more about where you've come from, but also where you're going. And it gives me, kind of you're a role model, definitely to me and many of us. And I just it gives me I guess like a certain type of validation, like, okay, like I can keep going because she kept going and she's doing all of this. And so it kind of helps me stay brave and stay, staying in the podcast and staying making my videos and staying passionate and, and also accepting that there will be ebbs and flows and tides and that it's okay because we have time. And so
Mhm.
that's what I get from you. I don't know, you have a really calming and confident way of speaking that I appreciate so much.
Wow.
So thank you. And so,
Thanks,
yeah.
Laura. It's going to be sort of strange to watch a recording and listen to a podcast because it's going to be like, ooh, I can't change that. Ooh, you know,
There is a
I've
permanency.
participated
Yeah.
in a documentary about car henge once,
Okay.
by a colleague in the film program, and he interviewed me in my studio and asked about, is it art, is it not, and I look back on that and it makes me squirm. And
Oh,
yeah, but I'm sure I won't squirm with the
I
podcast.
I
Sure, it'll be
hope not.
just fine.
I mean, I didn't ask any tough questions like is it art or
Yeah.
is it not art? I
No,
asked
but I think we
help me.
always judge ourselves,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
having ourselves be out there, whether it's a photograph or
Yeah.
whether it's like a linear interview.
Yeah.
uh, you are making something permanent out on
Yeah.
the
It's
web.
a
Yeah,
kind of a little time capsule.
yeah, it's a commitment. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, thanks for making me do it.
Well, thank you. I'm honored that you were willing to. So,
Yeah.
and so then this is when I say to the public audience, thank you so much for tuning into this interview. We've enjoyed sharing all of our, conversation with you. And we're going to go on over to the after show. So if you want to hear what we're going to talk about over there, you know what to do. But other than that, thanks so much for tuning in. And we'll see you in the
Yay.
next one.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Hello. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. And this conversation doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show where Rian and I continue our discussion, visit the website patreon.com/thepodcastiron. And for as little as $1 a month, all supporters get access to the after show recordings from every episode that's ever been published. So if you're new here, the after show is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more, with each show's guest, where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. And since it's not super public, sometimes the stories can get quite spicy. So, yeah, if you sign up now, you'll get access to listen to the after show from this episode and all of the other shows for all of the other episodes. And so I just really would appreciate it. And every dollar makes a difference to subsidize the cost that I undertake to make this resource publicly available. And you'll get the after show, the private after show. So it's a win for everyone. In conclusion of this public portion of the episode, I hope that you enjoyed listening to this interview as much as I enjoyed learning about all of Rian's life experiences and the nuances in the development of her body of work. Rian, thank you so much for the gift of this interview and for being open and honest about your path in life this far. As a constantly active artist, you have accomplished so much in so many different areas. I'm so glad that we've gotten a chance to grow closer in these past few years, and I wish you the absolute best with all of the irons that you have in the fire. I can't wait to see you in San Diego, California at the end of October for the Western Conference. And now, one last thank you to the top supporters of this episode for helping me continue to afford offering this show. So thank you to the Metal Museum for your support of the podcast and for offering our cast iron art community such an amazing exhibition and learning opportunities, as well as foundry apprenticeships. In my opinion, the Metal Museum is one of the premier places in the world to learn the art of iron casting, and to have a museum of this caliber exhibitioning works by artists in our tribe, it's an honor and a gift. Thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for being a top supporter of the show. I'm so honored and encouraged to have your support, and thank you for all of the work that you do in service of the Western region of the U.S. and its cast iron artists. And thank you, Sloss Metal Arts, for being a top supporter of the show and also for your year-round work as a national center for iron casting and metal art. and for offering our community visiting artist and resident artist opportunities, as well as hosting our national conference. So yes, in closing, thank you to all of our other individual supporters on Patreon. The funds that everyone contribute are invaluable to help me to continue to put on this show. But if you don't have it in your budget to support the podcast Iron on Patreon, it's okay. I understand. Instead, if you could share this with someone you think would be interested in listening or watching, and I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps, and for that I say, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. And one last thing, I want to kind of go a little off the script, but I want to say that the Down on the Farm Pour, which is hosted by Kelly Ludeking and his wife Diane up in Iowa, in Decorah, Iowa. So that event is coming up at the end of this month. It's over 4th of July weekend. I think it starts all of the information is on the website. So I don't want to tell you any wrong information, but go to the website, which is dotfironpour.com. So Down on the Farm Iron Pour, dotfironpour.com. And all the information, pricing for the packages for attending the conference are there. They have information about the camping, the event, the costs of iron and sand if you want to bring your molds, or if you want to participate in the mold making workshops and everything. Food is all available on site. And I went to this iron pour last year and had such a great time. I don't think anything would have been able to keep me away this year. So I'm going, and you should do. I'd love to see you there. I know Kelly would too. And if you're interested in what my experience was, I actually have a video out on my YouTube channel. And so the YouTube channel is just Cast Iron Gypsy. You can Google it, or you can go to YouTube and search for it. And so then if you look for the video called Down on the Farm Pour, or I think it's Iowa. I think it's called Iron Farming in Iowa, actually, because it was a little bit clickbaity and fun. But you can see my journey last year of what it was like attending this amazing event for the first time. And so you could check it out and then see if maybe it's something that you want to, because you still have time to buy the tickets. You still have time. And also they'll have it next year too. So you can start thinking about it, but that's a fun little thing if you want to do some homework and see what it's like and what it will be like. So, but that aside, I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.